Hey, what's up everybody? This is Power Glove Pixels back again with a new video. On today's video, I'm going to be talking about my top 5 Sega Genesis games of all time. Now, keep in mind that these are my opinion. There isn't a right or wrong answer to any of these. These are just games I remember playing growing up. So let's start this video. So for my number 5, I'm gonna have to give it to Punisher. This is a game that came out in 1992, yeah, I have a lot of memories playing this game at the arcades. But when this game came to the Sega Genesis, it was definitely different. But one of the things that makes it very unique is the combination of weapons and some of the dialogues of the villains and some of the weapons designs and environments of the stages. They were so different than any other Sega Genesis that I have played in the past, and definitely very underrated game and super expensive if you want to get a complete cart of this. I've seen it on eBay for over $100, so definitely my number 5. So for my number 4, I'm gonna have to give it to Streets of Rage 1, not 2. Even though I love the second one, the soundtrack is amazing in part 1 and part 2. Honestly, this game, when it came out on the Sega Genesis, I was just blown away, just from the music standpoint, from that perspective. And some of the character design was pretty unique for its time, and I just had so much fun playing this game back in the day. So definitely Streets of Rage 1 is my number 4. So for my number 3, I'm gonna have to give it to X-Men. Being someone that loves X-Men characters, watching their cartoon and the comics, honestly, when this game came out to the Sega Genesis, I just couldn't stop playing this game. I just love the characters, the design on the levels, the villains, and honestly, it kind of sucks that the Super Nintendo didn't really get a good X-Men game. Some people like that X-Men Apocalypse, but you know, that game sucks ass in my opinion. But for me personally, I love the Sega Genesis version of X-Men. It's one of my favorites, and definitely that's why it's my number 3. So for my number 2, I'm gonna have to give it to Castlevania Bloodlines. This is a game that when it came out, it just blew me away. You know, I've been a big Castlevania person since the NES all the way to the Super NES. But when this game came out, I just loved the soundtrack, the boss fights, the stage levels, everything about it. I just love this game. Every time I just turn it on, I always get sucked into it and start playing it for hours. And definitely, I have beaten it a couple times, but you know, it's a game that you could always go back and, you know, just play it. I have so much fun playing this game, so definitely I recommend it for anybody that loves Castlevania. So before we get to my number 1, I gotta say that the Sega Genesis there's just so many games that I just couldn't put on this list because there's just tons of arcade ports, you know, and it kind of sucks that, you know, it lost to the Super Nintendo, even though the Super Nintendo was a more powerful system. And, you know, the Sega Genesis, you know, having the 32X and the Sega CD and all kinds of things that pretty much was one of the reasons why it died. But to be honest with you, like, I just love the Sega Genesis. At the time, I was blind by Nintendo, but you know, years later, I started to appreciate what the Sega Genesis was. So let's get to my number 1 because that's what you guys want to hear. So my number 1, I'm gonna have to give it to Phantasy Star Online, and it's part 4. And for me, this game, when it came out, this is the reason why I started loving the Sega Genesis. So let's start from the music. Epic. I love the music in this game. If you really pay attention to the music in this game, it has so much, you know, soul, and I that's one of the reasons why to this day I still love Phantasy Star, either online or offline. This game, just from the music, especially for me that I play music, for people that don't know, this game really, like, yeah, it really got to me. And that's just one part. The second part, the storyline was so unique with these characters. it was just amazing experience on the Sega Genesis, and I just couldn't wait for, you know, the next Phantasy Star Online. There's just so many things about what makes this game so great on the Sega Genesis, and honestly, every time I try to play this game, I just get sucked in. And you know, I'm pretty excited for the new Phantasy Star Online that's coming out next year. But you know, that's a way different, you know, it's online, it's not offline, but at the end of the day, it still has that spirit of Phantasy Star. So that's why I choose this game as my #1 game on the Sega Genesis. So this is pretty much it for the video. I'd like to know down below, what are your favorite Sega Genesis games growing up? And yeah, so this is Power Glove Pixels. Till next time.